Hello everyone and welcome to Spoiler Warning featuring myself, Tom Colohue. We have quite a jam-packed show today. Plenty of news involved. I could go over the headlines, but they're all based around one particular story, and that is the impact on the WWE from Vince McMahon's return. There is a little talk about the involvement of Endeavor, what the belief is around Triple H and Vince McMahon working together, who wanted to stay, who wanted Vince back, and who very much wanted to go the second Vince McMahon's name came back up. So there is a lot to cover on that one. We're very much talking the extent of Vince McMahon's impact, how the WWE has changed simply by having him return, because my God, has it. It's really changed a lot of what is planning and what is and a lot of what should be different by the time we get to the big events like WrestleMania. There's also a bit I want to talk about as regards SummerSlam, what Vince McMahon is booking and what Vince McMahon is planning for that particular event. I want to say a huge thank you and a hello to everyone who's already here. I can see so many of you already saying hi. We have Dark Society, Leon, Brad, Joe, Daz, Christoph, Mark, Ross, Venom, Aaron, Airwolf, CM, Marcel, Elof, Ari, as well as plenty of people on Twitch side, Spider-Boss, Bailey, and Sean already. Also CBRS Entertainment. Welcome. How you doing, mate? So there is a lot that we need to cover to start off with, but please do not go quiet. Say hello to each other, react to what I'm saying, ask your questions. We will get to them, I promise you. We are going to start with this particular piece of news, but I do not want that chat to go dead, so please remember to hit like and say hi to each other, react to things. It really does help boost the chat rate, and if the chat rate is high, if the likes are high, this show really takes off. Bray Wyatt will indeed be getting mentioned. And a little bit on Sasha Banks' Mercedes money, as I'm sure you may have guessed. So, overall, I will have to say the vast majority of people in the WWE, regardless of what position they are in, are unhappy that Vince McMahon is back. And I feel my first question to everyone has to be, are you happy or unhappy that Vince McMahon came back? There are a number of people who have been very open backstage, according to a number of different individual sources, who tell me that they have not been particularly happy with the return of Vince McMahon. Notable names do include Bray Wyatt, who apparently was not very happy about the return of Vince McMahon and did cause a bit of an issue, which we are now seeing play out on our screens in the lack thereof for Vince McMahon. This is also, of course, notable because Eric Young was indeed supposed to be working with the Wyatt family. He was already doing a little bit as regards production and planning, and a little bit when it comes to creative for Bray Wyatt, but unfortunately that did not come to pass. Around WrestleMania time, when these plans were being put together, Eric Young was told, Eric Young told the WWE, I think that's time now, goodbye, and we'll walk away from this one. Bobby Lashley, also not believed to be particularly happy. Vince McMahon did promise Bobby Lashley on his first contract back with the WWE a Brock Lesnar match that actually happened during his second contract with the WWE. Lies were promised, essentially. Promises were made and not kept. That's probably an easier way to say it. Now, when it comes to Bobby Lashley, he will still have opportunities, but he is not believed to be particularly happy about working under Vince McMahon. Omos, a little bit further down the card, also not someone who it looks like particularly happy. Despite getting the match with Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania, nothing has happened with Omos since, very little at least, and it's not believed that he's going to be a serious threat going forwards to basically anyone. There's a number of others, basically anyone who has a history in NXT. I'm thinking, for example, Io Sky, Dakota Kai, and the like, people who maybe did not make it to the main roster. And there are a number of people who, of course, with no real surprise here, were actually brought in by Triple H or brought back by Triple H, were not particularly happy to see Vince return, and were basically exploring their options. Second question for all of you. Of those people who were brought back by Triple H, who are the ones that we know Vince McMahon already was not a fan of? Who do you think, for example, is at risk when it comes to Vince McMahon and may have asked for their release? Because I'm going to give you some names, and I'm also going to give you some names of people who maybe did not get the contact they were looking for. So immediate names, Brad, you are absolutely correct. That's one that immediately came up. Karrion Kross has not had the rub of the green under Vince McMahon, has also not really had that opportunity underneath Triple H either. But the return of Vince McMahon is not said to have enamoured Karrion Kross of the situation, and Kross is one who is believed to have asked for his release. This is coming from sources backstage. I have already mentioned Bray Wyatt there, Joe. Christian, spot on. The second name on the list is in fact the team of Hit Row. Hit Row not believed to be particularly happy. Once again, not getting the opportunities right now, so I think that's telling. If wrestlers were getting the opportunities that they were looking for, I don't think there'd be anywhere near as much of an issue as there is now. But unfortunately, that's where we are. Hit Row definitely believed to be a team that aren't particularly happy with the situation. When it comes to people who were looking like coming back, I can say that contact immediately around WrestleMania time stopped entirely between people such as the members of Authors of Pain and the members of the Iconics. Contact was ongoing about potentially having them return to the WWE. That contact ended quite abruptly in the wake of the announcement that Vince McMahon was returning to the WWE. That contact ended quite abruptly. There's a number of more names on there. Johnny Gargano's name has been mentioned. That's not anything I've personally heard. I've not heard anything personally about Johnny Gargano, nor have I heard anything about LA Knight. Though Nikki Cross has been mentioned there by Christian, there was a plan being put together for the return of Sanity, which was pretty firmly nixed by Vince McMahon upon his return. Ross says, did Vince McMahon prevent Jay White? He did not. There was nothing that prevented Jay White coming from the Vince McMahon side. There is simply a belief that Jay White was not exactly being wooed by the WWE, and as he is a pretty hot commodity and a pretty big name, he did expect a little bit more. There were issues around his finisher that I've mentioned previously. Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson. I can see Eric has just asked about Mitchin. Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson also were moved to SmackDown, where Paul Heyman is active. With Paul Heyman being active there is an ongoing issue as regards the Good Brothers and Paul Heyman. This was not smoothed over before the move was announced. It is believed that that particular draft choice was Vince McMahon's. Vince McMahon made that particular draft choice to move the OC over to SmackDown, where Paul Heyman was. No, Mike Games, everyone Triple H brought back is not in danger of being let go. That is not the case. Gunter is believed to have questioned his push and asked questions, but was never at a point where he was considering leaving the company. Other requests have been made for releases. We know, for example, about Ali, who previously requested his release under Vince McMahon, withdrew it under Triple H, and started to get a few more matches, but is believed to be questioning his position once again at this point in time, and may well be asking for his release once again. Spider-Boss is saying, did Vince McMahon ask to get Sasha Banks and Naomi back? No, because by the time Vince McMahon returned, both of them were under contract elsewhere, so he had no possibility to do that. None whatsoever. Joe, Vince is in charge of creative. Like, I don't know what you're saying there. Vince is in charge of creative. I've said this 1,000 times. I will say it 1,000 times again if I have to. Or, if I'm just being made to repeat myself, people who make me repeat myself will go away. Vince McMahon is in charge of creative. He has to sign off everything, okay? Khalid, I have already spoken about Vince and Judgment Day. There is a lot of conversation about that at this point in time. Daz, that is an assumption. Gunter and Vince McMahon did generally get on, but he wasn't happy with the push he was getting. No, Joey, Vince is not trying to break up Imperium. Venom Volta has not had the silver spoon ever since his debut on the main roster, but he certainly has recently. Joe, I'm not sure why you're asking me about my foot. Spider Boss, no, Bayley has not asked for a release. That's not something that's happened. Eric, I have no idea what you're trying to say there. Christian says, I wonder if Trips wanted to rehire Leo Rush and Nash Carter. No. I Get the Tables asks, when are we supposed to see these releases? The releases I'm talking about are release requests that have been made that at this point in time, to my knowledge, have not been confirmed. There is more talk about potential releases than actual releases, people questioning their position and people looking to get out of the company. I've mentioned Karrion Kross, I've mentioned Hit Row. There are ongoing negotiations and discussions about this between Triple H and most of the talent in question. Cheers, mate, for that question. It allows me to clarify a little bit more, and I appreciate that. No, Buttery, Vince was not planning to bury Gunter, but certainly he would not have been pushed as strong as he is. Joey says, why did they tease kicking out Giovanni Vinci? They also tease a punishment for Ludwig Kaiser at some point as well. It's not about actually kicking people out per se, it's about punishing them when they do wrong. Joey says, I wonder if more people will ask for their release. That's literally what we're talking about as we speak. Literally, as we speak. Thank you, Peter, for lurking. I appreciate that. Coot43, Bronson Reed is not affected to my knowledge. No, Joey, I'm not aware of any request for release from Tegan Knox or Emma. Mark says, I have a question I don't know if you can answer. When they question their position, do they say it to Vince or someone else? That depends entirely on the wrestler in question. Also, it could just be, to be clear, when questioning their position, something that's happening backstage and it hasn't actually got to management yet. I have quite a few sources when it comes to the actual locker room. I agree on that one, Ross. As regards FTR, Vince McMahon is believed to be the main reason that contact ended there and the main reason that FTR did not return. Okay. No Spider Boss. So next up, a number of former quite intense Vince McMahon allies are no longer with the company, and this is part of the reason that there is the amount of unrest that there was. There were a number of people backstage, particularly in the locker room, who would work to sort of smooth over any ongoing issues that would happen between Vince McMahon and anyone else. So if people were particularly unhappy with Vince, certain people would then sort of try and work that out. One of those people was Daniel Bryan, who was actually quite pro Vince McMahon backstage apparently, and would often take Vince's side in an argument in an attempt to smooth things over so everyone would happily work together. This is the same Daniel Bryan who left the company, but he left the company on very good terms, and Vince McMahon is believed to be someone who wants him back in every possible way. Randy Orton was another. He hasn't necessarily left the company, as it were, but his injury means he hasn't been in the locker room for a long time. This is, again, someone who would take McMahon's side quite often. John Cena is another, someone who would represent Vince McMahon, ally with him, and represent his views, as was Ronda Rousey, who is in the process of leaving right now. The return of Vince McMahon is believed to be one of the reasons that Ronda Rousey stayed a little longer, but is not believed to be enough for her to essentially stay now. There are still allies of Vince in the company, though, most notably, and a surprise that you're going to hear at some point, Drew McIntyre is believed to be someone who's on the side of Vince McMahon quite often as well. Charlotte Flair has been mentioned, and of course Edge. Essentially, this also includes Brock Lesnar. It is people from the older generation who tend to support Vince McMahon a little more. It's interesting hearing about Drew McIntyre, for example, because Drew McIntyre was previously fired and returned later under Vince McMahon. We currently have 92 people in the chat, 37 likes. If you're able to, please remember to hit that like button. The chat rate doing well at the moment. I still have quite a bit to get through. I will be taking questions and answering as many of them as I can during. It's no issue if you ask a question again a little later, for example, if you feel your question has not been answered. But please do keep that chat rate up. Let me know what you think and answer whatever questions we can have. When it comes to Vince McMahon allies, I've listed a few there that are no longer with the company. Daniel Bryan, Randy Orton, John Cena, Ronda Rousey, and a few that are still there. Drew McIntyre, Charlotte Flair, Edge, Brock Lesnar. Who else do you feel would have Vince McMahon's back of the particular class of people currently in the WWE? I'll try and answer as many of these as I can as I see them pop back up. There are a number of people in the WWE still very supportive of Vince, and this actually does include people who actually came back under Triple H after Vince had already left. Christian, spot on. R-Truth is definitely one of those. Mark AJ is a fan of Vince McMahon. They have similar political views to my knowledge, but there is an issue ongoing with Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson and their position in the company. Vince McMahon is believed to be the reason that they moved across to SmackDown, which is at the moment Paul Heyman's show. Bloody hell, I just heard someone screaming outside my house. They're very unhappy about something. Shane McMahon's return was all Vince McMahon. This is not something that Triple H had requested, and it's not even something that Triple H had specifically agreed to. So that's an interesting one that I always find very, very interesting to hear about. Shane McMahon was brought back entirely by Vince McMahon. He wasn't believed to be looking at a big push, but he would have been wrestling a lot more often than he's been able to because of his injury. Roman Reigns is someone, yes, who is on the side of Vince McMahon historically, but has not actually really stuck up for Vince McMahon previously. Under his new contract, Roman Reigns is not someone who's actually been in the locker room all that much and has not really been dealing with things. Seth Rollins has taken over a lot more of the locker room recently, as has Jey Uso. Brock and Roman, yes, Venom. Cody's an interesting one. Cody's sort of back and forth. Because he's quite recently back to the company, he hasn't really been getting that involved. Q43 mentions Austin Theory, which is definitely a factor, but Austin Theory is relatively new to the main roster, and he's mostly apparently been keeping himself to himself. Razar mentions Becky and Seth. Seth definitely, Becky not so much, and both are very much still supportive of Triple H. If it came down to it, I believe they'd go firmly in Triple H's camp. Okay, Rey Mysterio's been mentioned by Christian. Rey Mysterio is one of those classic names, but not someone who necessarily gets too involved in the locker room. Keyshawn mentions The Miz, again, someone who actually doesn't get that involved. He is more of a leader than he used to be, but when it comes to issues between people in opposing camps, as it were, we don't go that far for The Miz. Dylan says The Rock, who has not been back to the WWE for years, and thus is not involved in anything locker room-wise. Also, you said The Rock there, Dylan. Not sure if that's a different wrestler, but that could be a fun one. And that actually gives us a really good pivot, because there are some concerns coming down from Endeavour, or there were before the return of Vince McMahon, as regards the current stewardship, or the previous stewardship. They believed essentially that Vince McMahon's name was such an effective drawing tool that names such as Triple H and Stephanie McMahon would struggle more to attract big names such as the Logan Pauls and such as The Rock. Endeavour are very keen on the idea of having The Rock return to the WWE. They are likely to make overtures, and they want Vince McMahon to be the one trying to make that happen. They do not necessarily believe that Triple H has the drawing power to do so. Now, as regards SummerSlam, we are going to be starting talking about a few people you're going to want to hear about here, including names like LA Knight, Cody Rhodes, and Solo Sikoa. Regarding SummerSlam, Vince McMahon's writing has mostly been used for the women's division so far. Vince is thought to be largely behind the Trish versus Becky storyline, and indeed the Ronda Rousey versus Shayna Baszler story, but there's also others. For example, Rhea Ripley versus Raquel Rodriguez. Raquel Rodriguez is someone that Vince McMahon is very eager to see pushed. There was a push before she got injured that Liv Morgan could potentially take that spot. Under Triple H, Liv Morgan had been receiving a push, but under Vince McMahon, they've gone in a different direction. This may be to do with the injury, though, largely to do with the injury as to why Vince McMahon decided on the change. As regards LA Knight may well be making the SummerSlam card after all, and it is not because of Vince McMahon. The push for LA Knight is being entirely led by Triple H, who is trying to get more opportunities for people that the crowd are behind, such as LA Knight. Now, it has meant an opportunity missed for someone who Triple H has been pushing, Sheamus. But it's believed that, and this is a very interesting little point, Sheamus seems to have stepped aside for LA Knight, or at least stepped aside for someone who was looking at a good opportunity here. I don't know if Triple H asked him to, but Sheamus was expected to be getting the opportunity against Austin Theory. That moment hasn't come. Instead, LA Knight seems to be in the driving seat. This could change. Vince McMahon could impose himself on the upcoming SmackDown, where Sheamus and LA Knight are actually in the same match. But the appearance of LA Knight in front of the crowd on Friday was an opportunity for Triple H to basically say, look, this is huge. Listen to the response he's getting, Vince. We need to push this guy. We need to push this guy. Under Vince McMahon, there are questions about next year's WrestleMania. Vince McMahon is the one pushing for the idea of Cody Rhodes finishing the story and defeating Roman Reigns. Triple H is believed to want to push Solo Sikoa to that spot instead. Solo Sikoa would be the one getting to that spot instead. So, let's see what I've got around this one. Eric, the issue as regards the Good Brothers and Paul Heyman is that Paul Heyman, at least the Good Brothers believe, that Paul Heyman lied to them about opportunities they would get on their previous return to the WWE, particularly around the Boneyard match as well. Agreed, Joey, I mentioned that one too. Venom's excited for War Games. Jaden says Sasha Banks was pro-Vince. She was aggressively pro-Vince. She really was. And it's in every way possible that Vince McMahon leaving the company actually ensured that that contract was not renewed. Daryl says Shane's return didn't make sense. Well, they weren't able to follow up on it. Buttery just says the word Gargano and then a load of question marks. Spider-Boss says Alexa Bliss. Alexa Bliss not believed to be someone who really gets too involved in the locker room. Natalia, though, was quite pro-Vince. Hector says, was Steph ever on her dad's side? I don't know one way or the other with that one. Christian says, what about Xavier Woods? Xavier Woods is a locker room leader, and he is believed to be more of a Triple H guy. Ray mentions Becky Lynch, as I say, not really one that I have said so about. Noob mentions Asuka, though I'm not sure in what that is related to. Razar says, seems like a WWE Civil War is about to happen. Imagine a Survivor Series with Team Triple H versus Team Vince. Don't think they'd do that, though. I am not sure on that one, but I don't think Vince McMahon will be on screen at any point anytime soon. Once we get to 50 likes, there is a little more information that I can give you about that. We currently have 99 people watching and only the 48 likes. If you're able to, please consider hitting that like button. Be sure to ask your questions in the chat and react to any of the news that's happening here. Have a guess at what the news might be. I think you're going to like it. 2 more likes and I will absolutely start on that one. Spider-Boss says, since Hollywood actors are under strike, do you think The Rock could return to WWE? No. Christian said it wasn't that. I don't think that's true. Or wasn't it Vince who brought in both Logan and Bad Bunny? Trips who brought in both Logan and Bad Bunny. No, he was heavily involved in that, but it was under Vince McMahon that it happened. Ross says, assuming The Miz is highly respected within the company, putting people over and numerous title reigns. He absolutely is. He's very highly respected. Joey says, do you know if WWE has interest in Nick Aldis? No. Spider-Boss says, Vince a fan of the Judgment Day? Yes. Venom is asking about Johnny Gargano, and I just refuse to answer questions from Venom about Johnny Gargano anymore. Coup43 mentions Dolph Ziggler. He is pro-Vince McMahon, or a lot of opportunities came his way because of Vince McMahon, though he's very little involvement recently. Dylan says, is Bayley really hurt, or is it just a storyline injury? She is really hurt. She hurt her leg, her knee, is believed to be something that she should recover from relatively soon, but she might not wrestle for a couple of weeks. Mark says, who came up with the plans for Bobby Lashley and Street Profits? That could get mega. To my knowledge, it was actually both of them. They were looking for something to do with the Street Profits. Bobby Lashley was being held onto for a Bray Wyatt storyline. That storyline is not happening. He is now back and involved again. He was going to be returning around SummerSlam time anyway, but he's not going to get a match at SummerSlam, which I previously reported. Razar says, I really like the women's division storylines heading into SummerSlam. They've been getting a lot of screen time, way more than they did going into WrestleMania. Is this a Vince change? If so, I'm surprised. Vince McMahon is pushing for more women's matches. Triple H is pushing for more women's storylines before they then have more women's matches. So a little from column A, a little from column B. Michael says, LA Knight seems to be like Rusev and Cesaro, all people who should have been pushed. I completely agree. Daryl says, hope MVP returns for her business 2.0. I would agree with that one. Peter feels sorry for Cody Rhodes. I'm not sure you need to feel sorry. I think he's got a good opportunity here. Spider-Boss says, for once I agree with Triple H. I'm in favour of having Solo Sikoa beating Roman Reigns. We just hit 100 viewers currently watching this stream. We are on 62 likes. If you're not subscribed to this channel, please do consider doing so. We're at a current record number of 2,513. Pardon me. And every little does help the growth of this channel. If this is news that you are interested in and news that you enjoy, hit that subscribe button, stick around, and make sure you're here for more, because we do plenty of news as regards to WWE here that you will not be able to find anywhere else. Get the Table says, who's behind the Grayson Waller booking right now, getting the nod from Cena and Edge is pretty huge. It is Triple H who's trying to get him on the draw segment every single week and trying to get him heavily involved. The actual guests are largely being run by Vince to essentially give him a push similar to what they were doing with Elias and get him as high as they can as quickly as they can. Bossman says the camera can't handle his pencil stash. Daz, my favourite SummerSlam match of all time was The Rock versus Triple H in a ladder match at SummerSlam at 98. Keyshawn mentions Braun Strowman. Braun Strowman was indeed a pretty big Vince McMahon fan, but Triple H has also offered him a number of opportunities that he wouldn't get otherwise. For example, being choked out by Braun Strowman at Survivor Series many years back. Mick says, hi Tom, hope you're fine apart from the person screaming. It's the same guy, it always is. I call him Dragon Guy because at some point he accused his partner of becoming pregnant by a dragon instead of him. So, it's not his fault. It's not his fault. Thank you very much for subscribing, Jeffrey Morell. Thank you very kindly. You'll get notifications every time we go live when it comes to wrestling news and others as well. We do spoiler warning every Monday and every Friday, as you can see down here, and a SmackDown watch party on Friday nights as well, plus plentiful videos. I will be putting together a video on everything I've talked about here as regards Vince McMahon. I'll be doing that tomorrow in case people have missed it. So we're on 66 likes. Please do keep those likes coming. But there is a little more as regards Vince McMahon. There was a reaction, sources indicate, from higher up than Vince McMahon as regards the bad press received globally from Vince McMahon's return. This is particularly true of the Raw after WrestleMania. The Raw after WrestleMania was an absolute dumpster fire, and it really rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. A lot of people in the WWE, a lot of people in the media outside of the WWE were not at all happy with how that event went. And the amount of bad press encouraged certain high members at Endeavor, I won't say how high, certain members of the Endeavor company that will be overseeing the WWE and the UFC to have conversations with Vince McMahon about his overall level of involvement and visibility. They are trying to quash those rumours that come out, constantly saying that, oh, he's backstage, because they do not want the negative press associated with that. So while there have been rumours of a meeting between Triple H, Nick Khan and Vince McMahon, it actually goes higher than that, and a little while ago there were meetings as regards Endeavour around the negative press that Vince McMahon was getting via his appearances backstage in WWE events. Love to get your reaction on that one. In the hot seat says, Vince being back by the title has me nervous. Also, hello, happy Monday. Happy Monday to you too. Vince McMahon being back always makes people nervous, and so it should, even if they're fans. Christoph says, Tom, can you please explain what Ludwig Kaiser did wrong? Might have misunderstood, but if there was something, I didn't catch it. It was a long while ago when Gunter first arrived in the main roster. I think essentially he lost a match, so Gunter punished him. Bossman says, what's the plan on Ciampa after dealing with The Miz? At the moment, there is no plan for Ciampa after dealing with The Miz, but by the time he deals with The Miz, there will be one. Creative are currently still putting things together for him. They've not managed to put together anything long term. Spider Boss Bianca, to my knowledge, is more Triple H per se, hasn't actually spent much time with or worked with Vince McMahon too much, but she is a fan of, obviously, the championship runs that he's given her. Welcome, Kuro. Been a little while, mate. How you doing? Marcel says, how much Cherry Coke do you have left? I'm guessing 19. 30. I have 30 cans of Cherry Coke remaining. 30 cans. When I get bored downstairs, I will watch TV and bench as many of them as I possibly can. Like, it's not heavy in any way, shape or form, but it's better than nothing. Ken says, how long do you think Liv and Raquel will hold the tag titles? Is there a plan to make the titles mean something? Yes, there is a plan to make the titles mean something. However, the involvement of Ronda Rousey and Shayna Baszler sort of derailed efforts around that. So they're going to have to do some rebuilding. Peter Robb is asking for who's going to win the men's WWE Royal Rumble 2024 match. Good question. Richard says, is Asuka holding the title until Mania or dropping this year? I don't know for certain, though I do think Io Sky will be the one who takes it from her. 23 Fresh says, are wrestlers happy in AEW? Some of them are, some of them are not. Not really a surprise, that one. Bossman says, Vince pushing women's wrestling. Yep. Vince McMahon is a lot more involved in the women's matches on SummerSlam than Triple H is. Eddie says, anything on Nick Aldis? Nope. I've never heard anything one way or the other on Nick Aldis. There are, of course, some things which I don't think I will ever hear, to be honest. There are plenty of people I don't have sources as around, as it were. Alicia Miller says, have I missed any updates on Jimmy Uso? Or is his injury storyline? His injury is absolutely storyline, and in fact has already been mentioned as happening about a month ago here. Brad says, hit that subscribe button, people. If you've not yet done so, I implore you to consider hitting that subscribe button. We continue to grow at a pretty strong rate, and I very much appreciate anyone who has checked us out. I tried something new and different today. I essentially launched a TikTok before the show went live, stating that I was live, just to see how much interest we actually got from that. That's already had 203 views, and it may be one of the reasons that we are having a very good and well-attended show. Spiderboss says, who's behind Rhea Ripley's push? Both Triple H, who scripts it, and Vince McMahon, who approves it. Sean says, when he was in WWE, was Dean Ambrose anti-Vince? No, he was not anti-Vince. Michael says, Fightful Select mentioned the group that was supposed to be around Bray. Is that the Wyatt Six? Yes, it was. I did mention the Wyatt Six quite a while back. When I initially reported that Bray Wyatt was returning a month before that happened, I mentioned a faction being built around him. That actually has not really happened. We saw the Wyatt Six, and there were plans in place to get them out there and debuting, but ultimately the Bray Wyatt storyline happened so slowly that it never actually happened. Venom says, do you think the Usos will go to NXT at some point to win the NXT tag titles? Probably not. Para, how you doing, mate? Good to see you. Good to see you. It's been a while, my friend. How's you? I'm fantastic, mate. Very good to see you. How are you? Keyshawn says, they ruined Elias. Good luck with that. Elias got huge responses, massive responses. It wasn't until, honestly, I'm going to say the pandemic kicked in that things went sour for Elias when he was buried. Peter Roberts says, did you watch the G1 Climax 33? Yes, I did. I, in fact, went into it at length during Nick and Tom's Intercontinental Adventure. Jaden says, Tom, do you have any update on what happened to Bayley at the live event? I don't know what happened. I just know that she has picked up a knee injury. Bruce says, Tom, how are you doing, buddy? Doing very well, thank you, Bruce. How are you doing? Good to see you. Michael says, Endeavour wouldn't have done the deal without Vince, but don't want the bad press that comes with Vince. Yes. It's an interesting position, isn't it? Very interesting position. Dylan says, Tom, are you going to watch SummerSlam live on the channel? Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Bruce says, Tom, when's SummerSlam? When SummerSlam is. End of the month, I think. Ross says, is there not only one person above Vince for Endeavour? No comment. There is more than one person as regards the actual company that will take place above UFC and WWE, but as regards Endeavour, there's not many people above him, is there? Rizal says, if I'm going to be honest, I'm more of a fan of the collaboration as opposed to have a Triple H or Vince running things on their own. They both have areas where they lack. Vince McMahon has basically tweaked every single show in some small way. In some small way, he's been involved in the booking and the tweaking of every single show. So if you're happy with some recent shows, Vince has been involved. Sean says, speaking of LA Knight, Wrestling Observer says, despite his popularity, LA Knight is still listed as heel on the internal roster. To my knowledge, that is true, but let's just say they're working on changing that. Blue says, Tom, that isn't true. I'll be able to get this news somewhere else in 2 months behind a paywall. Fair comment. I say you won't find this news anywhere else. It does seem to keep popping up behind other people's paywalls afterwards. Alex says, hey, what did I miss? The entire news section on Vince McMahon, but I will recap it once I get through the questions, so by all means stick around. Daryl says, can't wait till Endeavour take over, then these Vince McMahon Fiend talks can be less. Bruce says, will Sammy do anything with Jimmy and Jay? They have moved on from that storyline at this point. You know the deal, says, hi Tom. Do you see SummerSlam having the most matches on a PLE since the Triple H era? No, I see WrestleMania having that as it was 2 nights. No, Peter, I haven't seen the redesign of WWE Network yet. I'll have to check that out. Mark says, do you think there are any plans for Gunther as world champion this year? I would be purely speculating. I personally think yes. Venom says, what are the plans for the Creed brothers? There are no solid plans on the main roster for the Creed brothers as of yet. Venom says, do you see Tony getting called up anytime soon? No, Tony Khan is already actively in position at the top of AEW. He doesn't need to be called up. Richard says, once the Endeavour merger happens, will Vince have the power he currently has? Yes, he will have the exact power that he currently has. Joey says, I don't think Vince will let Triple H sign any new talent. Not up to Vince McMahon. He doesn't have the entirety of the purse strings. It has largely been up to Nick Khan, and Nick Khan is the one who's been limiting that availability. Bailey says there's a backstage disagreement that many of Vince's old cronies are still around. No. At any point when Vince McMahon was not there, they could have said goodbye to them. They chose not to. Q43 says, is Vince returning cancelled call-ups? Yes, but also call-ups were cancelled even when Vince wasn't there. That was last year though, Bossman, wasn't it? You've seen what you've just said there, right, Joey? Vince never signed anyone, only people he wanted. Yeah, he was the head of the company. Why would he sign anyone he didn't want? Jaden says, what's the Mercedes news? The Mercedes news was just what I mentioned earlier. Essentially that there is talk backstage about the idea that maybe Sasha Banks would have been Sasha Banks again if Vince had actually stayed around. Because she was pretty firmly on the Vince McMahon camp. Now, as regards where Mercedes is at the moment, there is talk of the fact that she has undertaken a surgery, this coming from the Wrestling Observer, and that she's currently still on crutches, but we'll see how that plays out later. I'll catch you later, Wiggly. Thanks for dropping in. Venom says, will you be watching the American Bash next Sunday, Tom? Is that NXT? Because if so, no, I never do. Joey says, if Triple H had full control, I think he would have brought in Jay White and Kota. Well, here's the thing you're missing. Triple H doesn't get to decide what people do. The people in question get to decide what they do. Jay White decided not to come to WWE, so no, he wouldn't. Christoph says, Tommy, you're hyped about New Japan's ongoing G1 early predictions. I think Ospreay is going to have a hell of a year, and yes. Daryl says, I got a feeling Jimmy's going to turn on Jay. I don't. That says, any AEW news, Tom, regarding Miro, where he has not been seen for a bit. I've mentioned that before. The situation with Miro at the moment is that, at least until Vince McMahon returned, he kind of wanted to return, to my knowledge. This is what people are saying backstage anyway. Bruce said a little while ago, we've got 103 people here. Please hit the like button for Tom. We actually now have 113 people here. Please do hit that like button. We currently have 80 likes. That's only 20 away from 100 likes. So please do make sure to hit that. Spiderboss says FDR versus Bullet Club Golden Collision was awesome. Cool. Christoph says, by the way, I love the last Intercontinental Adventure podcast. Thank you kindly, Christoph. I appreciate that. Peter says, endeavour with Vince, better the devil you know than the devil you don't. Kara says, I'm good. Crewing title regularly. Good shout, good shout. Not trained for a while because life has been quite difficult. Also doing graphic design for a UK promotion. We'll DM you about that later. Cool, let me know. Dark Society says people are furious about Vince being back. Some are not. Spiderboss says, funny that Meltzer comes with Mercedes Money news just after Mercedes Money's news was heard here first. Yeah, I always appreciate the confirmation. Spiderboss says, does WWE have any plans for Cora Jade? Hasn't been doing anything relevant since her rivalry with Roxanne Perez. She's still been doing things, though. She's still been doing things. Just because you're not particularly a fan of those things, still doing things. Venom, you're asking about Tony again. Once again, Tony Khan is already involved in AEW. Andrew Quinn says, does Kenny Omega join WWE in 2024? No. Razar says the whole WWE sale was so Vince could stick around. If that's the case, could he have not sold and stayed, or would that not have worked? He left for a reason. People keep forgetting that he left for a reason. The sale was because he thought, oh, it's all died down, I'll just come back. And then he did. Jack says, if Cody beats Roman for the title, does that mean Cody moves to SmackDown? Potentially, though there will be another draft afterwards. Venom, you've already asked this. Tony Khan is already live in AEW. You can't keep asking the same question. Michael Winston says, do you believe Lashley gets another main championship run? I absolutely do. He is definitely going to get a pretty big opportunity. Martin says, good evening, mate. I'm lurking tonight. Hope all good in the chat. All seems good, mate. Ed has got rid of some messages there. We have a couple of new subscribers. One of them is clearly having a massive troll alert. Honestly, go for it. Give me my chat rate. Fine with it. Go nuts. Chat rate me. Thank you very much, Ed, by the way. 23 Fresh says, did Sasha get along with Triple H? As far as I can tell, yes. Triple H gave her some pretty big opportunities. Bailey says, the Sasha Banks story isn't over. Endeavour will see the media interest of her in movies and eventually make her a big offer. I don't question that for a moment. I do think they will try anything they can possibly do to bring Sasha Banks home. Eric says, do you feel like there's any chance we get a Rock, Grayson, Waller segment at SummerSlam? No. Mark says, what has the reaction been for David Benoit being on AEW? Pretty good. Pretty good. Brad, I'm fully aware that he's talking about Tony Khan. I've already answered that question. King Rail says, is there a wrestler that hasn't returned to the industry that you would like to see come back? I'd like Ryback to come back so I could see him get beat up. Ryback versus Omos would be something nobody wants. Dylan says, Tom, I'm not sure if you even know, but what time does SummerSlam start in the UK and Ireland? Not sure. It'll probably be the pre-show starting around midnight. Alex says, I hope and think Solo will be the guy to beat Roman. Cody ain't that guy. Coot says, was the Hardys and Jericho pro Vince whenever they were in the company? A lot of back and forth. A lot of back and forth on that one. JJ says, hey Tom, with Becky going part-time soon, do you see her becoming a champion again? Yes. Yeah. It's Becky Lynch. Championship will always follow her around. Vegeta says, anything on Pillman Jr.? Not a thing, unfortunately. Not a thing. So, we are now running a bit low on questions. Please do bring in any questions that you have. I'm going to recap a lot of what we've reported there, at least as much as we did at the beginning. For any of those who joined us a little late, it'll be a recap. It'll be a bit more abrupt. I will also be putting this into a video tomorrow, and I implore you to check that out. I definitely implore you to check that out. I strongly believe it's going to be one of those videos that should do pretty well. Venom, Brad, fully aware that you're asking about Tony Khan. Completely understand. I've already answered your question. Like, I've done everything I possibly could to answer your question. Okay? Everything I could. Would it help if I told you about Johnny? You know, Johnny Impact. I know you're really interested in, Johnny Impact, formerly John Morrison. You're a big Johnny guy. Mark says, how long will this last? As long as he keeps asking the question, this will keep happening. That's all I'm saying. Keith Sean says, Force and AEW fight forever. Not played it. And Eric, I do not have anything on the Jamie Hayter injury, unfortunately. Nothing on that. Sean says, did you know if Andrade was on his way back to WWE? I do not know. To my knowledge, his contract was still ongoing. So he could not do so. Venom, you didn't ask it once. You've asked it several times over the last few shows. Also, so what? Bailey says, any more news on AEW ticket sales for London? They're getting close. No one's ruining my day, King Rail, don't you worry. Nobody's ruining my day. I'm having fun. Daz says, who do you see winning on Wednesday, Blackpool Combat Club or the Golden Elite? Golden Elite. Kota Ibushi needs that moment, and I think it'll be a damn good moment. Keyshawn for Brian Pillman, I'm not sure. I don't really know too much about him. I don't think he's WWE bound. Daniela says, evening Tom. Evening Daniela. And Backward says, hey Tom, do you still think we're going to get Gunter versus Brock at some point? Yes, I do. Both men really want it. Quite a lot of fans want it. Quite a lot of people involved want it. Eric, poor taste. Very poor taste. Very poor taste. That's all I'm saying. Two Super says, any news on Jade Cargill return? Nope, unfortunately not. I don't have the sources in AEW that I do in WWE. I share what I can, but ultimately I'm limited. Sean says, Ms. Alexa, Seth, Becky and New Day will be on a new episode of The Weakest Link tonight. Cool. I strongly and fondly remember The Weakest Link featuring Kane way back when. A number of people are notably unhappy with the return of Vince McMahon and pretty much everything that has happened since. Names on that list include, reportedly, Bray Wyatt, Bobby Lashley, Omos, and pretty much anyone who spent prolonged time in NXT. There are a number of people who were brought back by Triple H who are looking over their shoulder at this point. Reports indicate that Karrion Kross is one of those, the members of Hit Row as well. They may be looking to leave the company at some point soon, particularly under Vince McMahon. There's others, for example, Ali, who withdrew his request to be released under Triple H, but may be rethinking his position now under Vince McMahon once again. There was ongoing contact between names such as Authors of Pain and the Iconics. The Authors of Pain and the Iconics. There were a number of people who were also being contacted. I don't have further names, but I was simply told that there were a number of other people who maybe were not given the messaging that they wanted. FTR is one of those that got away, and Vince McMahon's return is believed to be the catalyst for them signing new deals with AEW very late in the day. Gallows and Anderson, Luke Gallows, Carl Anderson, have moved to SmackDown. They did not want to work on a show featuring Paul Heyman. It is believed that that may have been a Vince McMahon choice, and that has also rubbed a number of people the wrong way. Gunther is said to have asked questions about his push when Vince McMahon returned, but is not believed that he ever actually considered leaving the company. There is obviously a quite notable difference with how Gunther was being pushed under Vince McMahon and how he is actively being pushed under Triple H. Quite a number of former big Vince McMahon allies backstage have left the company recently or are currently on injury or hiatus. Daniel Bryan was one that has been mentioned actually a few times for me. Considering he left, that was a little bit surprising, but they apparently left on extremely good terms. Randy Orton is another one, John Cena, Ronda Rousey, etc. Though a number of pretty prominent Vince McMahon fans are still with the company. Drew McIntyre is one of those that's been mentioned to me, as is Charlotte Flair, Edge, and of course, naturally, Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar being one of those. Shane McMahon returning was all Vince McMahon, not something that Triple H actually wanted to do in any way, shape or form, but it is very much what happened. Shane McMahon was expected to get a minor push and wrestle a lot more than he did. However, that did not happen, of course, due to the injury. There is a concern amongst some at Endeavour that Triple H does not have the natural drawing power that a Vince McMahon does to certain big name celebrities and the like. These names include people like Logan Paul, who of course came in under Vince McMahon and actually signed his new deal under Vince McMahon, just under the wire before the sale was announced. They also include, for example, The Rock. So there are some slight concerns amongst the Endeavour side that are in above WWE and UFC. As regards the upcoming SummerSlam event, Vince McMahon is involved in the writing and the booking, though he is primarily focused on the women's side. He was heavily involved in the booking for Becky Lynch versus Trish Stratus and for Ronda Rousey and Shayna Baszler. There is also talk that he is the one pushing for Raquel Rodriguez to take on Rhea Ripley, when there were previously talks of Liv Morgan being the one to get the nod. LA Knight is not someone that Vince McMahon was particularly behind pushing, but Triple H continues to try and make that happen, and he used his opportunity this week on SmackDown in the promo to try and say, look, people are behind this guy, we should be giving him the shot. Vince McMahon is believed to favour Cody Rhodes against Roman Reigns to main event next year's WrestleMania, whereas Triple H is believed to favour Solo Sikoa. We currently have 96 people watching and 83 likes. If you're able to hit like, please do so. We've not been this close to 100 likes for quite a while. I'd very much appreciate if we can get that one over the line. 2 Super says, who would you like to see dethrone Gunther? I think Drew McIntyre will be the one, and I'm not going to hate the idea. Razar says there were reports that Utami, and I'm going to go off from what Richard Smith is saying here, Utami Hayashishita was at the PC and she was invited by EO. Is WWE interested in signing her? If she was invited by EO, it is not at the behest of WWE. Ross says, in the chat, I was thinking of getting Fight Forever in 2K. Do you guys enjoy the game? I've played 2K, but I actually last played 2K14. Vegeta says, any news on Nikita Lyons? Nothing that I've got, unfortunately, on that one. You don't need to be sorry for jumping in, Martin. I appreciate that. It's a very positive message. There's no downside to it. Backwards says, is Braun Strowman a Vince guy? Braun Strowman is a company guy, and I think that's the best way to leave it there. 2 Super thinks Dominic should be the one to beat Gunther. I wouldn't hate that idea. Sean says, would Malachi Black have been contacted for a return if he wasn't signed with AEW? Quite possibly, yes. Triple H is a big fan. KJ says, Lashley and Omos is upset with Vince returning, but when they better positioned under Vince. Now, I do see, Martin, that you've asked a question on that one. I can say that the source that KJ is citing is me. I did mention that a little earlier. There are talks and reports that Bobby Lashley and Omos are 2 people who weren't particularly happy with the return of Vince McMahon. So KJ is just discussing what I've reported there. Omos may have been particularly better off under Vince McMahon at times, though I doubt that question. The opportunity at WrestleMania was a Triple H shot, though there is a genuine opinion that Vince McMahon was involved in it, and I really can't question that. Vince McMahon definitely seems to have been involved, but Triple H signed off on that one too. Omos has not been featured for a little while, and he doesn't look like he's going to be for a while. Rain says, Cross needs to go to Impact or something, pull a Drew, then come back stronger. Yeah, that's also not a bad idea. Joey says, Killian Dane probably didn't want to return either once Vince came back. To my knowledge, that is true, yes. Will says, SummerSlam could have up to 4 women's matches. Would this be a Triple H or Vince call, or maybe both of them? Both of them. It's very hard to separate them. Vince McMahon is pushing for those matches and is involved in the booking of them, but ultimately Triple H is the one who writes the stories. Joey says, Bruce Pritchard is still there. He loves Vince. Yes, he does. King Rail wants Stephanie back. She can put over a lot of people with her heel tactics. Stephanie McMahon, to my knowledge, has no interest in returning at this point in time, particularly as an on-screen character. Dylan says, Tom, with Stephen Amell appearing on Raw tonight, is it possible to get a match at SummerSlam? Possible, very unlikely. Nelson Welcome says, what happens to new Vince allegations that were going to come out? Certainly, I'm surprised as anyone. Wade Keller did report that there was going to be a lot more coming out against Vince McMahon. There were some things that came out, but certainly not the glut that I was expecting from him. Horsey says, smash those likes, let's get to 100. We're currently on 86. We get closer all the time. This has been a hell of a show. We are back to a point today where we actually breached 100 viewers and got up to, I believe it was 118. It's been a little while, particularly since before Paris, but we are continuing to regain our momentum. I also had a short earlier today, which is currently sitting on 1,300 views, which is good because that's more than 100 views per hour. Nice place to be. Spiderboss says, do you think Roman wins with some help at SummerSlam? Not sure. 2 Super says, how would you feel about Bray returning to NXT? Bray Wyatt would leave. Bray Wyatt would leave before returning to NXT. Ole says, hello Tom, how are you? Doing very well, thank you. OLE, how are you? Appreciate that, Eric, but that was in poor taste. You probably should have thought a little more on that one. As it says, hey Tom, do you think Street Profits will turn heel with Bobby Lashley? Yes, I do, and I think so will Bianca Belair. Aled says, who do you think will win the Rumble? It's a long, long way to the Rumble. I would not speculate at this point in time. Bailey says, for all the backstage drama, WWE's seen some of its best ratings and highest ticket sales in over 10 years. It's a good time for that company. Absolutely it is. This right here is much more lucrative than the Attitude Era was. Sean says, are the Usos and Carmella Vince fans? They're not names I've really heard much about, unfortunately. Martin says, I'm away for SummerSlam, can't use my phone in Turkey as charges are so high. Gutted, otherwise would have used network on my phone. Appreciate that. I have roaming with my network, but it depends which side of Turkey you're in. Ori says, afternoon, Mr. Colohue. Hope you're having a great day. With Ellie Knight being aware of how over he's become, especially via TikTok, it'd be a missed opportunity if they didn't pull the trigger. I do think LA Knight will actually appear on SummerSlam. Sheamus is stepping aside from what I can tell. You know the deal said, with the Hollywood actor strike, is there a possibility we see more Cena or The Rock involved in WWE? No. Because if they're on strike, they would not appear in the WWE. Backwards can see LA Knight dethroning Austin Theory. KJ says, you may have mentioned this already, but did you see Fightful reported a Wyatt faction was in place before Wyatt got sick? You said that months ago. Yep. Yes, I did. I did mention it. I didn't mention that particularly because I think most people who are here are fully aware of what I continually report and how reliable I am. How good a run I'm on. Let's just say that. I think most people here are aware of that, and honestly, I'm more interested in what you watching right now think compared to people who have never watched, etc. Gotcha, Horsey, gotcha. Razar says, of Endeavour fully taking over, will they grant people their releases since they're more worried about money if talent doesn't want to be there to save money? The majority of anything financial will come under Nick Khan, though Vince McMahon is obviously involved in that as well. Spider-Boss says Triple H wants Solo Sikoa to beat Roman and Vince wants Cody, so I guess Roman retains at SummerSlam. Dethrone doesn't necessarily mean for the championship. I was talking about the match at WrestleMania. I still believe it's possible that Jey Uso wins at SummerSlam, and then Solo Sikoa takes over as the tribal chief at WrestleMania. Covered a little bit, Devon. By all means, rewind and you'll find it. Blue says, Tom, I do not think that the actor strike stopped anyone from appearing in the WWE. Legally, no. But it's not just legally, it's also morally. As I says, he's also asking, who do I think is going to win the Royal Rumble? Jack says, is there anybody besides Ari Emanuel that's over Vince McMahon? Fair question. Fair question. We've been live for 55 minutes. We peaked at 118 viewers. We're at 86 likes. And we've gained a couple of subscribers as well. I want to say a huge thank you to all of you for joining me. We will be back on Friday, though I will be writing up and preparing everything that I've said here in this video, putting it together, in this live, putting it together into a video tomorrow and releasing shorts basically taken from it. So if you have come in late, if you want to see a shorter, briefer, really concise version of this news, you will be finding that in a video released tomorrow on the main YouTube channel. Until then, I want to say a huge thank you to all of you for joining me. I'm going to wrap up here. I've been Tom Colohue. You've been fantastic, and I will want to say that I'll see you all very, very soon.